and welcome to part 2 of this Reaper tutorial series. I want to show you a few simple editing functions so that you can very quickly start working with Reaper and making it your own. This series is thought for beginners or people that have worked with other digital audio workstations and are not completely familiar with the Reaper itself. So I'm going to be talking sometimes about different ways to do different editing tasks in Reaper and other digital audio workstations by comparison. But today I want to address a few very simple features that will allow you to edit. So as an example, I'm bringing this stereo file that I recorded in the UK near London of a fast train passing by. I already know this file, therefore I'm going to bring the gain down since I know this moment where the train is passing in front of the recorder is quite loud. And this is more adequate to the level that I'll be working on. So what is this concept of clip gain all about? We drop the file and the timeline is visualized as an audio item in Reaper. We've trimmed the sides and eventually brought the gain down. That is because these 2 points where the train start and finish pass before the microphone are quite loud. We wanted them to be softer, so we brought it down. The way we do it is we navigate with the cursor to the top of the item where the title bar is located until the cursor changes into this horizontal line with an up and down arrow. Then we simply click. We get an item volume indicator that's at 0 dB at the moment, and I can bring it down. The indicator will also display the amount of gain we're reducing. In this case, we're attenuating this item's gain by 1.63 dB. But what about our file was actually softer? So for example, if we had trimmed a little bit further and now our item has a softer gain value, but let's pretend that this is a very soft recording and we need to bring it up. And if we do the same thing, go to the top till I see the horizontal line with the arrows, then click, and I can't go further than 0 dB. How do we work around this situation? We will hit Shift on the keyboard and then click and drag up. We can now add some extra gain to our file. We can go really far pushing this value, and this will be quite helpful in cases where your items will be not loud enough for the level that you will need in your project. So remember, clip gain all the way up to the item title until you see the horizontal bar with the arrows, then click and drag up or drag down to modify the item's gain. You can see the file is larger and there's a movement here and I'm talking and there's like contact of the material of the recorder. I don't want to hear any of that. So I'll show you how to very quickly trim this file. And the way you do it is by using this feature, this multi-tool feature in Reaper. This is also similar in Pro Tools and other programs. Changing the position of the cursor provides us with different tools. So in the bottom, we have the trim function. That's what we're looking for now. I don't want to hear any of this, and I also don't want to hear any of this. So in the front and on the back of the item or clip, depends on what you want to call it, we're going to use the trim function to determine when the audio content of this file starts playing and when it stops playing. So now when I play, we have a stereo file on a timeline. I would like this file to be actually in the beginning of the session. So let's learn how to move our files in the timeline. If I click somewhere in this work area, there will be no file selected, and if I click and drag, I can only select the timeline. This is a little bit counterintuitive in your first approach to Reaper. The way you will select this item is by clicking on it, or if you want to select multiple files, would like to do Shift and click or you would like to do right click and drag to determine an area. Below this area, every item or clip will be selected, as you can see right here. If you want to deselect them, you need to click back on your work area where there are no items. How did this happen though? We had one file, now we have two files. This is another cool feature of digital audio workstations in general that will allow us to click the file and hit Command in Macintosh or Control in PC and drag this file and create copies of the file. So it's a very easy way to create new copies of our file. You can appreciate here that Reaper has also created new tracks every time we push below our last track. So that's a very straightforward way to work with multiple iterations of a single item, and it will help us on the fly quickly draft some sound ideas. For example, what would happen if I would like to have a delay between these two files, and I would like to do this in a very old-fashioned analog way. We could almost say for actually a digital environment, but I want to see actually visually what the delay is here between my two signals. So I can just click and drag my file and just move it slightly so that we have a delay. And now we have a very soft delay, and of course our signal in our master is clipping because we are now duplicating this rather loud signal. We could bring this down. Now we can have the delay without the clipping. You can of course make multiple iterations of this file and use them creatively. Before we go deeper into what we can do vertically by piling different tracks on the edit section of our workspace, let me show you what an item is and what you can do with an item just by itself. So we determine this gain level initially, and when I play this item, I can see that it starts playing on the left channel, and then the train moves from left to right, and you can see the Doppler effect, the decay here in the waveform. The level is louder on the right channel in both cases. So the train is coming from the left and going towards the right. This way of perceiving sound visually is very useful and very important for us while we edit. So I want to show you how to make this visual representation of audio clearer for you when you're editing. There are moments where we would actually like to see more of the waveform. Like for example, if I would like to edit this area of this file, in that case, you would like to hit Shift and your up arrow, as you can see on the keyboard representation here in my screen. And the signal here is not clipping. If I play this file, you can see that the signal has not changed its gain attribute, but it's clearer for us now to see what's going on in the softer moment of this item. Zoom in vertically on the waveform to see what is happening. When I dragged the audio in the session, it made a new track for us, and not only it made a new track, but this track was a stereo track. Everything is routed and ready for us to work with. That's very convenient. But what if I would actually need this audio to be mono? There are certain circumstances where you would actually want that. I would like to show you now what are the options to turn this item into a mono audio signal just with a right click. There's an extended menu when I hit right click on the item. I'm not going to go through all the possibilities here that include what to do with this take, how to group or ungroup items, and even processing the item itself. For now, I'm going to stick to just the settings and show you that I can actually reverse the stereo. So for example, when I play this audio now, our train is coming from the right and moving towards the left. If we're working with a video where the movement of the train is from right to left instead of from left to right, this would be a good idea. Simply reverse the audio item This will not change the original file, but it will change the way it's played by Reaper. If I go to the settings, I see there are more options. Some of them deal with the amount of channels that will be reproduced. So if I now change the mode of the take channel to mono, I will see a mono item, and when I play it, you can see here both channels have equal gain. That means this is a mono signal. In this case, I chose the first mono option, which is a down mix of both channels. There may be situations where this is what you need to do, but there are situations where you would like to have only the left channel. So your pick on either the left channel or the right channel, or down mix of both channels. For the moment, I'm going to keep this in stereo in original format. Okay, so we defined that we can select this item by clicking on it or by right-clicking an area, dragging the area over it. Once the item is selected, I can click and drag on it and move it horizontally on the timeline or move it vertically to create new tracks. I can also do things internally with this item. I could, for example, save this copy of the original file as is and work on a new copy. This is something that you may want to do to keep a backup of your original file. If that was the case, you can very easily click to select the item and hit Option and M to mute the item. By muting the item, it won't be played any longer. Now we're only hearing this version below, and if we mute that one too, nothing will be played back. This is very useful. There are cases where you would like to do that. There are cases where it would be actually a good idea not to do this so that your session doesn't become overwhelmingly vertical. And as you can see now, I can freely move this audio item and work with it. And let's say, for example, that I would like to make something different out of this file. The train comes, passes in front of the microphone, all the cars pass, and when the train leaves again, we have the Doppler effect and the decay of the sound. Let's hear it. So after the 8th car, the object goes away from the microphone and we don't hear it anymore. But what if we have to work on a very small animation where a train passes really quickly and our sound cannot be this long, we need it to be shorter. So how would we shorten the sound? We can of course duplicate this and say, let's leave the end of the file and let's use the beginning of the file and then put them together. And now we have one single pass. We don't have all these cars passing by in between. But what if we would like to do this without duplicating the item? Let's imagine this is a very long file and it's not so easy to have a new copy and do what we just did. You could also split this item by placing your cursor on the timeline on the desired split position, and then right click and say split items at cursor. Now the item is split and we can change the beginning and change the end. Now we have a single pass. There's another way you can do this, and that's using a shortcut. In this case, when I right click, I can also see the shortcut. In my version of Reaper, this shortcut of split item at cursor is B because I set it up myself. However, the default shortcut for split is S. So now by splitting our sound in two parts and combining them together, we have a new sound that's made of two items. Now if I want to click and move this, I run into trouble because I can only move one item at a time. How can I make sure that this sound stays together and it actually becomes a new sound? You could group these items so that they move together. I will select them by right-clicking and dragging over both of them. And when both are selected, I can right-click on the area and say group items. And now the items are grouped If I click and move, they will be together. Another way to achieve this is to select both items and right click on them and say glue items. But in this case, we don't have two items that are grouped, but one single item. When I right click on the item and I check the source properties of this item, I can see that Reaper has created a new file by combining these two original items. And this is a good way to make sure your sound is consolidated, is a new file that will be saved to your project folder. Another way to duplicate an item is to hit Command D on the keyboard and create a duplicated copy of the item we're working on. We're going to mute this copy and save it, and we're going to work with this audio file. There's a lot more you can do with an item, and I want to show you a couple of ways to access the information on the item container that will help you be creative with your audio. A very simple one is to stretch. By hitting Option on your keyboard, you can stretch the file and make it slower. And as you can hear, depending on the resolution of your file, the file will start to break. The more we stretch, the more it will break. If we go back to our original size and we compress the time duration, it's likely that we will not have artifacts. The reason is that digitally Reaper is here subtracting information, discarding information, and creating new sound with already existing information. But when we stretch the item, we are creating time, and this time is empty. And to fill this empty time, Reaper has to create new audio, and this new audio is created algorithmically. This algorithmically created audio is unnatural and sometimes uncanny to our ears. We call these phenomena sound artifacts. Usually they're not intended. There are particular sound design situations where we could actually benefit from these artifacts, but we're going to leave that for a more advanced tutorial. Another feature you can access by clicking and dragging your item is using the Option key, clicking and dragging and moving the actual start and end of your item. That's particularly useful when I want to synchronize two sounds. For example, let's shrink this audio and now combine it with the original audio. But when I move this item, I reach the beginning point of my timeline and I cannot go any further by clicking and dragging my item. So I could hit the Option key, click and drag, and now I can actually put both items together, the original speed and the new sped up version that we created, and have them work as a single sound. We could reverse the stereo on one of the items to have an interesting effect. So there are two more things that I would like to talk about. One is the difference between an item and a file. I've used them kind of indiscriminately here. They're not exactly the same thing, but this is a kind of a deeper philosophical question. Different terms to refer to this audio container. Item is Reaper's preferred term. I've also been talking about file. To make sure we understand the difference between file and item, you can see that this is an item that refers to a file. So where is the file? We can go to our source properties, and by selecting this path, I can easily come to Finder and say go to folder, paste this address, go, and here is our file. Maybe we want to call this a physical unit or a digital unit, but this is the actual file, and this is a container that is a representation of this file in our digital audio workstation. Each program has its own way of naming files and logical units that represent files to make things more confusing. In Pro Tools, an item would be called a region. But in Reaper, a region is something else. And that's the other thing I would like to mention in this video before we go. A region is a timeline selection that will be very useful for your workflow in Reaper. So let's say I have this selection that I would like to work on. And for example, in this case it's 28 seconds. But let's say I need to prepare a video or a piece of audio that lasts 33 seconds. In this case, let's make it 30 seconds. So this is roughly 30 seconds, slightly less, just in case our browser goes a bit crazy. And when I select again another area of my timeline, I lose this selection. If I do Command Z, I can go back and recover it. Now, if I want to continue working confidently and not lose this selection, I can use this insert menu and create a region from time selection. And now when I double click this region area, I select every item contained in this time selection. So if I had multiple items edited like so, then I would be able to move all of the items within this region. This is particularly useful when I'm going to work on several versions of a particular design, or if I want to try a new draft, and then I can bring my file and try something new. So I could have multiple regions on my timeline, and when I need more space to, for example, keep working on the beginning of my timeline, I can make new regions and move everything to the back and continue working on my 0 minute, 0 second, 0 frame of my timeline. This is very useful for multiple versions of videos or multiple versions of single sound design. Like you may want to have designing user interface sounds for game audio, for example. A quick recap, we threw a file in our timeline. In the timeline, this file becomes an item, which is a container that represents the audio stored in our disk. Once it's in our timeline, we can manipulate it in several ways. We have trimmed it to use only a particular part of the file. We've also seen that we can split this and separate it and create new sounds. Once both items are selected, we can move them. But if we just click on this, we only select one of the items and then we're into trouble. To avoid that, just group them by right-clicking, hit group items here, and now we can confidently move with a single click. Region from time selection, this allows us to move multiple items in our timeline together and make room for new drafts or new material to work on. Next time we will talk about the vertical aspect of this workspace, tracks, and how we can route our signal to organize it when we are working with more audio. This will be quite necessary, and I'll show you how you can do that very easily in Reaper using tracks as containers of other tracks and turning them into sort of folders that you can expand and contract to make your session better organized and more visible and easier to work on.